All right, yes, indeed. It is once again time for the Kanika Lifestyle Podcast. I am your host, Kenny, and I am joined this morning by the one, the only, Nika, everybody, the other half of this podcast.
Well, thank you, Kenny, and hello to you. Good morning.
Good morning, dear.
Hello to our new returning listeners to these weekly Oak Island, reviews, I guess.
Review, recap.
Recap. Sure.
This is the official, this is our Oak Island podcast, if
It
you
is.
will. Something that we kind of started doing just because not a lot of people talk about this show, I guess. It's one of our guilty pleasures. I guess that's how the best way to describe it. And we've been hitched on for so long. I feel like you're going to just tune in at this point to see how it all ends if you live long enough. I joke because yes, this is season 12 and we just finished episode 15. And by my math, that is episode number 220. Yes, you heard that correctly. Of this show. There are literally 220 at least hour-long episodes. I think some are bonus double episodes, so there might be even more than that. But theoretically, there are around 220 43-minute documents of this show.
And it's 12 seasons, so 12 years out of our life has been devoted to this.
Yeah, I remember it started with 5 episodes in season 1. It was 5. And
they were longer or shorter?
They were about an hour still.
Oh, okay.
And things were very early days. We've seen so much on this show over the years. Scuba divers going down caissons and having
Floodings.
problems, flood tunnels, more problems this week, everybody, with water and with caissons. And now tons and tons of heavy duty equipment.
Oh, yeah. And cavings and...
Yeah, sinkholes. I guess one of the greatest fears since this show has been going is would this whole area collapse at some point because of all the 200 years of treasure hunts that have happened on this island? I mean, and that's not to say the whole island's going to go underwater per se, but just this area, the money pit, is looking more and more to me like it's on shaky ground going forward as just existing.
Well, if you imagine Swiss cheese with all these holes in it, that's what that area looks like.
Yeah, and if you keep trying to make new holes in that block of Swiss cheese, what's going to happen eventually? I know it could kind of stay standing for a while, but eventually it's going to collapse in on itself.
Potentially.
Some places.
Maybe that's what's needed, I guess, to get that treasure out finally, because apparently it's been eluding them all these 12 years.
If it does sink in, do you just have to dig towards the middle wherever the source of the sink? That's it. Is that X marks the spot when that happens, or is it something else potentially?
At this point, that might be our best option.
Oh boy. Well, it was episode 15 of season 12, Channeling the Solution. And we got started right away in the money pit because last week when the episode ended, we kind of started to have the starts of this sinkhole, and they kind of left it up as a cliffhanger. Now, I don't know if last week I said this or not, but I am under the impression that this coming week was the final episode of the season. And now I'm not really so sure anymore looking at the past couple seasons, because those went 25 episodes, and next week will be episode 16 only of season 12. So season 10 and season 11 were both 25 episodes and went about to the end of April, early May. So we're not there yet.
And this next episode wasn't announced as a finale either.
They did not say that at the end on the next time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the reasons why I was led down this line of thought was because of the title of next week's episode, which we will talk about at the end. But just wanted to clarify that up front, because if you have been following our Oak Island podcast, then you would probably be a little bit confused that next week might not be the final episode. Okay, now that that's out of the way, we did start right away with this problem with the TB-1 caisson and the fact that it's caving in. They started to backfill it, and then Vanessa wanted to fill this entire caisson with water. And that's supposed to help it stop collapsing, right, Nika?
Yes, she wanted to fill it at least 50 feet with water to stabilize the caisson and then fill up with some dirt as well.
Yes,
That's the
so they're
solution.
backfilling the caisson with like gravel and any dirt like loose that they can find, and at the same time they're filling the actual caisson with water. Man, that's a lot of water. 7-foot caisson, like 50 feet.
That's a lot.
That's a lot of volume right there. Anyways, I wrote down that Vanessa had the plan here, and I was pretty impressed with how quickly she was able to take charge of the situation and salvage what was happening.
Oh, yeah, she provided a solution pretty quickly.
Yeah, impressive.
Yeah.
Good stuff, Vanessa, if you're listening. All right. Well, after that, we quickly cut away to the swamp area where Marty, Rick, Tom Nolan, by the way, whose land I believe they're on now. And that's why he's there, because we'll talk about this in a second. Craig was also there. Billy G was notably absent. Billy Gerhardt. He was not in the arm grabber that we normally see.
Scooper?
The little scooper. I don't know what that technical name for that tractor is. That's how bad I am with like construction terminology, everybody. But we'll just call it the arm grabber, and I think you'll know what we mean. Anyways, it was not Billy. It was a new guy, and I didn't actually get his name written down. What was it?
His name was Alan.
Alan.
I don't get the
Well, he was like listed as Nolan Construction later in the episode, so that's what led me to believe he was linked to Tom Nolan and that they're on his land now, and only his guy could dig on his land. And it's like, wow, this is crazy.
And Tom Nolan is Fred Nolan's son who passed away.
Yeah, and Fred Nolan was one of the previous treasure hunters, and they just wound up settling on their land that they bought there. And
Yes.
But they don't actively own any of the money pit land anymore and that stuff. That's Marty and Rick, obviously.
Yeah.
All right. So they start digging out more of the swamp here, and they get a recap of basically Fred Nolan. He found some survey stakes that he believed were from the 1600s, and also some wood that he felt was from ships, right?
Yes.
Okay. And then we also flash forward to the discovery of the Stone Road a few seasons back, which is basically when they drained the swamp, they started to find a road made out of stones that was like, you know, the old way we used to do things before blacktop and gravel and tar and all that stuff. Anyways, so then they also showed the square hidey hole that they found recently, which also might be on some weird old map that was found in a Jewish library book from way back. That's go listen to last week's episode.
That's exactly.
Boy, the tinfoil hat theories change week to week to week, and it's just hard to keep track of all the specific details. And we do prepare for the show.
That's why we are here.
That's why we were here, but I might also need to re-listen to my own episodes at this point so I remember what the hell was going on with last week's episode.
Maybe that should be a part of a show.
Yeah, before we watch the new episode, I got to listen to my podcast from last week first. Oh boy, talk about adding more time I don't have into life. Okay, Gary and Marty are digging up some of the spoils here from the arm grabber, and they come across a brick piece. We didn't get any more further analysis of this brick piece in this episode.
Do you think
we've kind of seen some of these archaeological finds, like the charcoal and a couple weeks ago? We haven't gotten some follow up on those yet, so it leads me to believe that either they are insignificant or that there's going to be a big reveal episode later, because it ties into what Steve the Surveyor was doing. All right. Speaking of Steve the Surveyor, he is called out at this time. Well, Gary's excited because of the brick, and they also find a wooden stake that looks like one of these 1600 survey stakes that Fred Nolan might have found, right?
Yes.
And so they call Steve the Surveyor in at this point, and they just kind of want him to start looking at like analyzing the finds and where they are in relation to everything else they found, right?
Yeah, they want him to map out potential survey of the land with those
where could we be going here?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. And then they mentioned some structure at the north end of the bog. Is this the rocks underground yet?
No, they are talking about the cobblestone road. The new discovery might lead to the cobblestone road that leads all the way to the lot 5. That this whole road connects all these little points from the hidey hole to the cobblestone road and the money pit potentially.
Yes. All right. So from there, we head over to the lab and we get Emma and Laird talking with Marty and Craig about the nails that were, I guess, I was a little bit confused on this because if you remember, they found some nails last week, I believe, with Gary and Marty and Jack Beagley on lot 5 or lot 4, one of the two. But these don't appear to be those exact nails because we already got those analyzed last week. These new nails have all come up from the spoils in the money pit, as far as I understand it, from the TB-1.
Right.
So just the fact that you're finding man-made nails underground 100, 150 feet, that's crazy. But the important takeaway from this is that 3 of the nails were deemed to be post the discovery of the money pit as far as dating.
Yes.
But one of them might be from before. And so that's interesting. And it does align more with the 1730 to 1750 time period that seems to be coming into focus a little bit. We'll talk about that more as we go on. But for now, we went back to the money pit where Vanessa has said that the stabilize is now successful. The water is helping a lot, and that the caisson is 164 feet deep. Now, the grabber that they're inserting into the caisson at this point is hitting some rock on the bottom, right? Vanessa says at this point that they're like, Marty, I think, is the one that mentions the solution channel here, but they haven't quite hit it yet, right? They're going to, though. Spoiler alert. But at this point, I just wrote down, this was like a quick recap. They're just going to keep going down. That's what Vanessa kind of leaves everybody with. And then we go back to the swamp again. And this was the majority of the episode this week was spent just between the swamp and the money pit and then room laboratory talks. So from here, it's back to the swamp. It's Tom Nolan again with Gary and Scott and Steve are there. Steve, the surveyor, is back. They reveal more of the stone path and they determine that it is now time for Laird and Dr. Spooner to come in and take a look at things. Anything else that you wrote down for this section?
They kind of leave it up to them to figure out whether they need to do excavation of that whole road.
Yeah.
That's how they leave things out.
This is all going to get kind of put into perspective, I think, by the end of the episode. But for now, we just moved back to the money pit again, and they're from 164 now at 170. And they've reached the solution chamber.
The solution channel is a naturally occurring underwater current.
Yeah, it's thought that this could be, I think, even one of the original quote unquote booby traps of how the money pit flooded initially. If you know all the lore and the history of the show, you'll know that people claim that when they dig underground, things start flooding. And it's
those are one of
traps.
Those are the booby traps.
To not, to block you from getting to the treasure. That there must be some kind of Indiana Jones like secret.
I hate snakes, Chuck! I hate them!
That needs to be discovered in order to find the actual treasure, right?
Yeah.
Like, you push this button, or if you steal the golden statue, the boulder might come out and squash you, kind of thing. But just underground.
Also, when they start digging into that solution channel, I think Marty says that nobody ever dig that deep in there.
Yes, and this leads to Alex, with his keen eyes, he spots a piece of wood.
Yeah.
And when he brings this piece of wood up, he put it in a bucket of water, and it doesn't float. Which, if you ever, I guess this is where the term waterlogged comes from. Once a log becomes totally absorbed with water, it will sink.
Right.
And
it's not gonna float.
Until then, it will float. You've
So
seen Lord of the Rings, Gollum is like floating along the river on a piece of wood, I believe, or a log. But that log obviously hasn't become waterlogged yet because it would otherwise sink.
What old wood sinks, new wood floats.
Yep. Interesting, huh?
Yeah.
It's not too hard to understand. Like, wood is how you make paper. If paper becomes wet, it would become logged with water. It's all so. Anyways, interesting stuff here. I wrote down that we got to 171 feet. It sounds like at the end of this money pit scene. From there, it's to the war room. And here we have new people on the Curse of Oak Island. Jeffrey Bilgore and John Ford Sr., who is the CEO of the American Gem Trade Association. And we are looking at this glass jewel that came up. Was this last week or the week before? Okay, so last week they explained how these fake gemstones were made in the 1730s in France, is where the practice began. And they would basically take molds that looked like gemstones and used a couple combinations of material to make a replica. And these were still worn by people of a wealthy stature to just kind of communicate even more wealth at that point. They were not cheap.
No, they were not. And also they were made to look like real jewels.
Can you remind everyone, if you do know, what these are actually made out of? Because I'm drawing blanks at the moment.
It's crashed glass. They used
Crushed
crashed glass and whatever else that it was available as a binder.
As a binding agent?
Right.
Yeah. I wrote down the materials last week.
Yeah, I don't have it in front of me, but I know they use crashed glass to make it.
I'm looking at my notes really quick. I might have this written down. Yeah, they found the glass jewel 2 weeks ago. So this is interesting because they also brought up some metal and wood and bismuth and thallium and lead. Bismuth, thallium, and lead were used with the glass as a binding agents. And when you put them into this mold, and I think you had to heat it up and let it dry and cool, it would come out looking like, in this case, they say that the glass gemstone that was found was made to look like a diamond specifically. And if you remember when Jack, when they found it, I think Jack was like, "Is that a diamond?" And so it gives him a little bit of cover for that, I guess.
Sure, but it just also speaks volume to the quality of artsmen.
I thought it was an overreaction on his part, but apparently not. So I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt. Good job, Jack. Good eyes. All right. These two gentlemen were pretty amazed that this gemstone was found on an island in Nova Scotia, and they feel like this had to have come from England, France, Spain, or Portugal.
Those are the only countries that were traveling back then.
Well, they were connected, obviously, and we know from 2 weeks ago that the practice was started in France in the 1730s. So they go on to say that somebody that had this gemstone would have been of European nobility and possibly a naval officer. And right away, we're back with our good friend Duke d'Anville, or as I'm calling him now, Duke of Anville, because I don't think his name is d'Anville. I think the D is of. And so I'm just translating, and I don't know. Maybe if I'm wrong, I'll be the first to admit it. But anyhow, Duke d'Anville is back, and it's time for the group to now go back in the field and find more evidence. And they're kind of charged up about this. And again, this is putting this time period into focus, right? There was definitely people on Oak Island that had some of these 1730s to 1750s artifacts.
And this is also during the time when the British wanted to reclaim the island from the French. Or the other way around.
Yeah.
They said it was some military activity going on
Yeah,
at
I think
that time.
we know that the British and the French are going to be warring over this territory in the is it called the French Indian War? I think it's the war before the Revolutionary War.
Yeah.
But it was between the British and the French actually, and I think the Native Americans fought on
The French side.
The French side. So you know who they wanted to have win. Anyways, okay. After we get out of the war room, it's back to TB-1 and the money pit. And then just a quick update before we go back to the swamp. Everyone's there. Even Katya's there, I wrote down. Gary and Katya side by side. Dual metal detectors on this one. And Dr. Spooner is there doing his analysis. And he says, pretty quickly that this is man-made. He's really interested about the wooden stakes, and also this is where Steve the surveyor is also coming back in, and he's going to go research even more. And yeah, we go right into the war room from here, and we get Steve the surveyor, and this was probably the most interesting and enlightening part of the episode, I would say. But it looks like you might be getting like an ancient sort of topography of the land coming into focus, if that is the best way to put it.
Well, it definitely shows the whole cobble road, how it connects all those little dots.
Yeah, basically when they put the wooden stakes on a line and they start to zoom out with the stone road and how it connects to the new stone road, and all of a sudden there's a path and a line that gets to lot 5, which is where they're unearthing this big structure that they think was involved in the construction of the money pit. So
I think
are they right? Do you think that this is
I think
connected?
so.
Yeah, I do too.
I think so, because as far as the date goes, it connects all those little dots, dates them at the same time. And what the lot 5 might have been where they were being housed, or where they were
Cooking
or whatever they were
doing their
like a domestic stuff.
shitting, eating, cleaning, sleeping, all that stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah. The good way of putting it, they're domestic stuff.
They were doing this on that lot 5 and excavating the other side of the island through that cobblestone, and that was their path, I guess.
Yeah, I would say so. So yeah, it does look like there was a route,
Yes,
if you will,
that's what it
away from a road from the swamp that goes to this lot, and I wouldn't be surprised if it leads right to this feature or multiple features that they haven't found yet.
I think Dr. Spooner said something that it has to be man-made because they didn't use tools back then. They used everything by hand.
Yeah.
So they constructed a whole cobblestone by hand. So they
Yes.
couldn't bring huge boulders.
It really puts those pyramid angles into perspective
Doesn't
when you talk about the modern machinery that we would be required to do some of those cuts in ancient Egypt, when we can't even like have tools in the 1700s apparently that were capable of doing anything other than just our hands and primitive.
Yeah, we had a wheel.
We had a wheel. Well,
Progress.
hopefully there were some wheels used to haul some heavy treasure, right, Nika? That's what they are all hoping for on Oak Island. Rick, I wrote down, is pretty confident. I've seen more so than in the past that the Oak Island mystery is now pretty clearly dated from 1680 to 1750 in his mind somehow. And I would probably have to agree with him, as much as that even disappoints me a little bit with all the theories that have been thrown out over the years. I always just felt like the older they could find stuff, the more historically interesting, significant it could be. Now, I could be totally way off base with that because we don't know anything yet.
Right, and that dates the 1680s to 1750s. That could be people excavating the older stuff that was there. We just don't know.
Yeah, the only thing that we don't know is that nothing really older has been brought up, at least not for a while that I've seen. And
Well, they could have found this treasure and moved it.
we've always maintained that that could be a realistic, sad possibility. Honestly, if I had found this treasure, I would have moved it and then started a legend that there was treasure buried there, because the people who buried it there would also know that I was right and probably want to stay quiet or not say anything. And so the whole fact that you had found it and then claimed that there was a treasure there would be the ultimate prank, right?
Okay, but where would you move it?
I don't know. Yeah, it would be hard to probably hide a treasure of that significance if it is indeed a treasure of that significance.
I can see when if you just find coins and little things like pebbles, jewels, that would be easier to move. But if you find the ark, good luck with that one.
Yeah, I mean, we're not finding any biblical artifacts yet, actually, on the island. Any hard proof evidence of anything crazy like that?
Well, the ark is in Africa, so
Most likely.
Most-
Ethiopia, right?
Ethiopia.
All right. So I'm intrigued by Steve's surveyor theory about where we might be able to start connecting some dots around here, though, and getting a clear picture of how all these things are connected. And when we talk about this being season 12, episode 15, man, you can just start to see an archaeological excavation of this island that might go on for another decade. Whether or not that's caught by history cameras or not, and we're on like season 22 of this show, I don't even know anymore.
I think Alex's kid's going to be running the show by the time we find anything.
Well, that's not out of the realm of possibility, I'm sure. It is definitely going to be a theme of the show going forward, I think, is how these people that are involved with this project pass it on and take backseat roles into the whole operation. And Alex does seem like he is poised to take all of this over at some point, as far as like the management. And he continues to prove himself week after week, I think, of just being mature and showing he's probably the character who's grown the most over the entire 12 seasons, right?
Oh, yeah. We have seen him from not a teenager, but like a young adult.
Yeah, he's the coming of age story kind of.
He kind of is. And right next to him is his cousin, Peter, which is still in school, I believe, in college. So he might be the next one.
It is, exactly. So that's just been nice to see. You know, we give Alex some crap sometimes. He's really come into his own and like he's become really well spoken on camera. And I think he's also very reserved. You know, he doesn't allow himself to get too excited like Jack does. Well, unfortunately, after this nice war room meeting, we went back to the money pit and things are caving in again. And it seems pretty alarming / serious. And Rick and Marty have a tough decision to make here and they decide to pull out. So I would assume we're going to be removing this caisson and everything, right? Like we're pulling out all the equipment. I assume they want to get it on safe ground as soon as possible because, man, if that shit falls 100 feet underground, are you ever going to recover it?
I don't know, but the music, the dramatic music, when it comes to this, it makes it as a very urgent matter. Yet they walk around like, no big deal.
Well, I wrote down that they are creeping towards a, quote, sudden collapse, and the caisson is sinking lower than 179 feet. So that is significantly lower than it had been.
That's because of that solution channel. That big
they feel like everything is now sinking into that. Like, do you think introducing the water into the caisson kind of like bridged a connection between those two things and
or did it speed up the whole sinking process?
Yeah,
I don't know.
It might have been a good temporary solution, but a bad long-term solution. And yet, I don't know if they had any other options. You know, like we said, this is very like Swiss cheese ground here.
But now, so they're gonna pull this caisson out. And they're going to put another one somewhere else because if you remember, they wanted to do 6 or 7 holes.
Yes.
So this is just the first one.
Yes. It does seem like this is not like doom and gloom per se. And this isn't like the end of the season, obviously, as we were discussing earlier. Like there's more to come. And it does seem like it's the end of the True Believers hole, though. It's just kind of funny because they made such a big spiel about this hole, like what, 2 weeks ago, 1 week, like when we were showing like there was like 36 people watching this moment take place.
I think this is a great TV drama.
It is some of the best executed TV drama you've ever seen. Because
at the end of the season, you are further from your treasure than closer to it.
Sometimes, you know, I don't know what to believe anymore. My back and forth just even changes in mid-episode sometimes where it's like, I feel like they're getting close and zeroing in on stuff. And then it's like nothing. You know, we had the interesting stuff going on with the map that was found in the Jewish textbook. And then we had the interesting stuff going on with the boulders and those maps that they found in the archives in, was it Massachusetts or Connecticut? From a previous Oak Island dig. And that's when they were lifting the boulders and they found that metal hook.
Oh, yeah. Okay, that was a while.
It's like they keep chasing down these leads, but then they circle around and it's like Duke Don V's week. So next week I'm expecting us to get back to like the boulders and the Connecticut maps. And then the week after that, we'll probably get back into the Jewish maps. You know, it's like they're just playing like roulette here with the different theories. Like I said, it's hard to keep track of all the pertinent details to each one of these. And like, so I'm glad they recover all the details all the time. That adds to the artificial lengthening of all this, what you're getting. And I feel like at the end of the day, we just didn't get a lot from this episode. The big major discovery was Steve kind of surveying the land and just connecting some dots and showing like a bigger picture that might have this stone path in the swamp leading to lot 5. If I'm a betting man, I'm going to say that that's a yes, that did happen. So
it just confirms that there were some activities on that island in 1700s.
Nothing more and nothing less. And why should we be surprised? We know human beings were around. So after the emergency with the collapsing and the decision to pull out, we get this sort of episode ending montage with the narrator kind of just saying on goes the Oak Island mystery, if you will. And it leads us right into next week on Oak Island. And again, much like last week, I wasn't gleaming a lot here. Although you can figure out from the episode title a few details here that they're going to be going back into this area that they have surveyed underground called Aladdin's Cave. It's hard to keep track of where they place importance, I guess, or how they rank the areas. But Aladdin's Cave, I feel like, is one of those higher area
priorities
because of the fact that like Aladdin, gold, treasure, and then you have this whole episode title going along with this called Open Sesame. And Open Sesame comes from the Arabian Nights tale. It comes from the Aladdin movie, Alibaba. And there's an Aladdin movie that is not part of the original movie, but is like a spin-off cartoon from back in the 90s still with Disney. And it had Jasmine and Aladdin in it. And they were doing the 40 Thieves, the tale of Alibaba, the 40...
Alibaba and 40 Thieves.
And that's where Open Sesame comes from in our origins.
Okay.
So there is a link between the episode title and Aladdin's Cave, potentially just from Aladdin lore.
So maybe the treasure is also from that period.
Well, wouldn't that be fun?
Would that be?
I mean, we haven't had the Persian treasure theory yet, have we? It must be the treasure that the Templars moved from the Arabic areas.
Oh, yeah, from the
Yeah, the
Crusades.
Yeah.
From the
all the way
Crusades.
back to Spain, and then Friday the 13th. See, it's all tied, you know, like that treasure got moved around, whatever.
If they find some knight's armor in the swamp, I will totally believe it.
Yeah, the only thing that makes me suspect that there's no biblical treasures here is because I feel like the Vatican would have shut this down by now. With all the Pope conspiracy movies we've seen, you know, of course we had Conclave this year. We've had Angels and Demons. Don't you think someone would have shut this down by now?
Pope is sick, so he's not paying attention.
Oh,
Maybe he
okay.
needs to listen to our podcast.
Okay, yeah. If this podcast reaches the Vatican, Rick and Marty might be in trouble.
Ooh.
Ooh. All right. Well, the only thing I wrote down from the preview for the next time on Oak Island is about this hammer grab. And they did show a hammer grab going into, I guess, Aladdin's Cave. So it looks like the caisson is going to get reset up for an Aladdin's Cave dig. And Gary makes a quote, "This is the most important hammer grab in Oak Island history," or something along those lines. It was going fast and I didn't rewind it. But
I thought they pulled out a lot of wood again.
yeah, it looked like a lot of wood and some
Old wood, though.
yeah, if it's waterlogged, go drop it in the swamp and see if it sinks.
But they drained the swamp.
Oh, right. Oh, they got an ocean around them. I think they can figure it out.
They are surrounded by water.
All right. Well, it was a fun episode, but yeah, it was also a little bit limited, I felt like, in scope, and we didn't get a lot of reveals here. I think my expectations going into it were, oh, this is the penultimate episode before the end of the season. And now I'm like very skeptical about that. So I think that might have played into how I watched it.
Yeah, I don't think this is the last episode that we're going to see next week. I believe it's going to continue.
100%.
But
yeah. But it doesn't necessarily mean that something exciting won't happen next week with the whole Open Sesame and going into Aladdin's Cave and like this big hammer grab that's coming up.
I want them to pull a genie in the bottle.
You heard it here first, folks. There's going to be a magic lamp and possibly containing a djinn or a genie inside. And then they can ask for 3 wishes to be granted and find the rest of the treasure if it truly exists.
Oh, that would be a great episode.
It would be. I am putting it on the highliest of unlikeliest possibilities.
Thanks.
No problem. If you're a writer for the show, you really want this to happen, right? But it's a documentary, so. No, we're just joking around, having some fun because there's so many tinfoil hat theories with this. Why not just bring it back to the Arabian Nights and the 40 Thieves? Why not? We haven't heard that one yet.
No, but I have that movie stuck in my head now. Thanks.
We'll let all of our listeners put that song in their head as we head off the air for this episode of Oak Island Weekly, the Channeling the Solution.
Well, the Bears are channeling their solution for the next season, so we might just get off so you can watch the Bears.
Bears, everybody. We got NFL free agency opening today. So
Yay.
officially, it's been going on for a couple days already. If you know about legal tampering. Yep, that's a real thing in the NFL. Legal tampering, everybody. It's a total double negative, but it exists in the NFL. So go figure.
Have a good one.
Have a good one, everybody.